Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating strategic analysis of the upcoming 2027 Nigerian elections. It's a high-stakes, rapidly evolving landscape, to say the least. We're going to unpack the power plays, the structural hurdles, and the deep political maneuvers that are currently unfolding. And we'll be looking at all of this through the lens of a highly detailed source document titled The 2027 Imperative.
Right off the bat, the source document poses a massive core question. Can a fragmented opposition actually survive against a powerful incumbent? The text argues that the ruling administration of President Bola Tinubu is actively and quite strategically consolidating its power. Meanwhile, the opposition remains deeply divided. The analysis posits that these two factors combined create an environment where a splintered opposition just cannot succeed. So how exactly is this happening? And what does the analysis suggest can be done about it?
To unpack this whole political maneuver, we're going to follow the text's 5 key themes. 1. The 2027 electoral landscape. 2. The iron fist strategy. 3. Shrinking the political space. 4. The fatal flaw of disunity. And 5. The imperative for unity.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the 2027 electoral landscape, setting the stage.
The document paints a pretty stark picture of the current status quo. On one hand, you've got a powerful administration that, according to the text, is actively neutralizing potential political threats. And on the other hand, an opposition that is fundamentally divided. The analysis really emphasizes that this is way beyond your standard political campaigning. This is about the ruling party shaping the very environment of the election long before a single ballot is even cast. It's exactly why anyone invested in the region's future really needs to pay attention to this stuff.
Moving on to Section 2, the iron fist strategy, legal and security apparatus. Here, the source highlights a very specific pattern, pointing directly at key targets. We're talking about figures like Nasir El-Rufai, Justice Crack, and Omoyele Sowore. The text argues pretty strongly that these are definitely not isolated incidents. Instead, it frames this as a broader strategy where the government is systematically neutralizing its vocal critics through targeted legal action. And the result? A profound chilling effect on political dissent.
Let's zoom in on one of the primary examples the analysis points out, the trial of Nasir El-Rufai. The source notes that he's currently facing multiple legal fronts. This includes parallel proceedings by the anti-corruption agency, the ICPC, and, get this, prosecution by the secret police, the DSS, under the Cybercrimes Act. By highlighting the use of a controversial TV interview as evidence, the document essentially frames this whole situation as the state deploying its legal apparatus strategically against a major political figure. And it goes beyond just the big politicians. The text cites these rapid-fire micro-narratives of other critics to show just how far this reach extends. For instance, the document points to influencer Justice Crack, who was arrested by the military and the DSS over a viral social media post criticizing soldiers' welfare. It also highlights the case of Omoyele Sowore, remanded in Kuje prison after criticizing the president. The strategy document argues that these actions are deliberately designed to suppress political speech and, essentially, take out anyone who might become a stumbling block on the road to the 2027 presidency. Which brings us to Section 3, shrinking the political space, attack on opposition parties. This part of the analysis brilliantly illustrates what it calls the structural battleground. The text details this crazy complex saga where a federal high court judge actually ordered the Electoral Commission, INEC, to deregister 5 opposition parties, including the ADC. But then the Court of Appeal quickly stepped in, completely reversed the judgment, and accused the lower court of massive overreach. The source really emphasizes the incredibly severe language used by the appellate court here. They didn't just overturn the decision, they actually called the lower court judge's actions judicial impertinence and judicial rascality for disregarding a previous order. And what's even more fascinating, according to the text anyway, is that the Electoral Commission itself claimed to be totally opposed to the initial deregistration judgment, stating they only found out about it through the media. So the analysis presents this entire saga as really strong evidence of potential underlying political interference, all aimed at stripping opposition parties of their legal status. Now we hit a crucial pivot in the analysis with Section 4, the fatal flaw of disunity, a history of fragmentation. The document uses some really compelling data from the 2023 elections to make a pretty harsh mathematical point. When you actually look at the breakdown, the combined votes of the opposition candidates absolutely surpassed the incumbent's total. But because those votes were split across multiple platforms, it secured Tinubu's victory anyway. The central warning the document has for 2027 is simple. Math doesn't lie, and division practically guarantees defeat.
This crucial point is captured perfectly in the text, echoing a huge expert consensus. Political analysts argue that in the current climate, individual ambition is basically a fatal flaw. Standing alone against the ruling APC's consolidated machine? It's futile. The text makes it incredibly clear that a coalition isn't just a nice idea, it is an absolute necessity. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the imperative for unity, the path to victory. So how does all of this translate into an actionable strategy? Well, the analysis argues that a massive, unprecedented coalition is required. We are talking about bringing together major figures, people like Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, Rabiu Kwankoso, Nasser El-Rufai, Omoyele Sowore, and even influential social commentators like Very Dark Man, all under a single united platform. The document really stresses that to actually pull this off, strategic sacrifice absolutely has to override personal ambition. To make this somewhat abstract concept of strategic sacrifice a bit more concrete, the source draws on two very powerful historical parallels. First, it looks right back at Nigeria's own 2015 APC merger. Back then, opposition leaders made massive personal sacrifices to successfully unite and defeat the ruling party at the time, the PDP. Second, it uses this grand historical metaphor, comparing the situation to ancient Greek city-states putting aside their bitter rivalries to unite against the invading Persians. The text argues that the 2027 opposition faces a very similar existential threat right now. But look, building this coalition isn't just about getting a bunch of big names in a room to shake hands. It's really about overcoming immense structural dominance. The analysis points out a staggering number, 8,800. That is the number of electoral wards across the country where the ruling party currently has deeply entrenched structural control. Let that sink in. To truly compete against an established political machine of that size, the text insists that the opposition simply cannot rely on popularity alone. They have to build a unified, robust, and highly active structure across all 774 local governments in Nigeria. Without matching the ruling party's ground game, the document argues that even a united coalition of massive names will ultimately fall short. Ultimately, this entire analysis leaves us standing at a really critical crossroads. The ruling party is actively utilizing legal and structural avenues to secure its position, creating an incredibly hostile environment for challengers. And the math clearly dictates that unity is the only viable path forward for the opposition. So the massive question remains, will the opposition succumb to personal ambitions and remain fragmented, or will they make the incredibly tough strategic sacrifices necessary to forge an unstoppable coalition? It's a high-stakes political chess match that will absolutely define the future of the nation, and you can be sure we'll be watching every single move. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.